Hello, welcome back. We are very nearly there. Happy to say we're at our final stretch. So moving on, we are going to begin with animations. Now, it's not quite a complex animation, it's quite simple. We're going to be using two keyframes. Very simple. It's very effective for what we're trying to do. You have to be controlling the camera a lot, and I'd like to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to hide this cube. If you didn't know how to hide already, you can simply press H. You come over to the right hand side and click this eye. Do not press the camera because that removes it from the final render. We're going to want it in the final render. Now, to make our lives a little bit easier, we're going to use a pivot point rather than trying to manually move the camera. And our pivot point is going to be where the focus is, which is the cake. That's where the camera is going to be focused on at all times. So, if you press Shift right click, it will move the world cursor to this point. In order to, this basically allows us to spawn any objects on that cursor. If I press Shift A, and I press plane axis, you now see that it's generated this plane axis. To understand what we're doing a bit more, I'm going to change from plane axis to a sphere, and then we're going to scale this down, like so. Then we move this down on the Z axis, just inside the cake. Now we're going to need to parent the empty to the camera, so we want the empty to be the parent. So I press the camera first, if you remember, and then we select the axis. And then pressing Ctrl P, object keep transform, and you see that empty is the parent. Now, to get started on the animating, as you can see, the final image at the moment is the image that we have at the moment is the final image that we want. We want it to end where it currently is. And our last frame is going to be 150. So while it's there, I'm then going to press I to create a keyframe. So once it's reached frame 150, it will stay. It will be at this point. So I'm now going to limit the frames to 150 now that we know our last frame will be 150. And I'm going to go back to frame 1 just by pressing 1 here. Because we now have a pivot point, we can now use this to control the camera a lot easier. So pressing R and then pressing X, we can rotate it along the X axis. As you can see, that's quite far away. If I show you the camera angle, it's quite far away. So we are going to, and if you look at the animation, we start zoomed in on the cake and then we slowly zoom out. So to do this, we can simply scale it down, like so. Come to there, see it's a lot better already. So finally, we need to turn it 180 degrees because it starts on 180 degree angle and then it turns around. So to do that, we just press R, Z, and holding Control, we can do it perfect 180 degrees. We're going to create a starting keyframe by pressing I. And if we leave it how it is, and then go into press 0 and then go into the camera, see, it's created our animation. But it's not quite perfect, as you can see. It shows the outside a bit too much, and it's quite slow to begin with when it's sped up at the start. It's just a bit too low at the start and at the end, so we're going to do a bit more tweaking to the animation. So, if we end it there, we go to the animation tab at the top, and that shows our animations. Turn it on. So, if we go drop down menu, we're going to focus on scale first. I'm going to press normalize, so it keeps the values between -1 and 1, so it allows us to access it easier. So I'm going to begin with by making it scale. Making it scale right. So we're going to begin by normalising this value here. Just keeps it between -1 and 1. Now, I believe I want it to scale slower. Faster at the start. No. Yeah. Scale faster at the start and slow down. Slow right the way down. Scale that. Make sure we are selecting the right. That is the right one. And then do the same for the Z scale. Like so. So that looks. It's already looking a bit better. Now we just need to adjust the rotation. So I think the rotation needs to be a quick, fast, just a little bit faster. Maybe. I think it's the Z rotation that needs to be faster, actually. Much better, much better. Maybe we can play with this x-axis a little bit. I think that looks very nice personally. So that's the animation to it. So just very quickly now, before we move on to how to do all the different rendering options that we need to talk about, see if it shows it here. Yeah, it does show it. So as you can see, current FPS is 24. Well, that's the default, I don't know. We do not want 24 frames per second. We want it to be higher than that. So we come to let's have a look. So if we come over to, not the render, sorry, the output. So it says Framerate. We're going to need that to 30. We don't quite need it to be 60, but we're going to move it to 30. And when you have 30 frames per second, I press 0. And there you have it. At 30. Well, the frames have dropped, but it will run at 30 frames per second once it's rendered. Anyways, move on to the rendering. Right then. So this can go back in view now. I can just focus on the camera. I'm just going to have a look at some of the rendering settings. Right. So if you have denoise on, you don't want the noise threshold on, because basically what the noise threshold is, it targets where to put more samples based on what areas have more noise or less noise. But when you've got the denoise on, if some areas get less attention than others, it causes splotching. So there is no benefit to having denoise on with noise threshold. So I'm just going to turn that off. Moving on to the sample count. If you're running on a very low powered computer or something without a GPU, using a CPU or a laptop, bare minimum requirements, I'd recommend is 300. If you're running on, pretty decent PC, but you still need it very quick, if you go 500 for an upgrade in your quality, for the perfect quality, I do recommend 1000 samples. If you have the time to leave it on overnight, then I do recommend using 1000 samples. I'm just going to leave mine at 300 for now. The time limit, basically what the time limit is saying is that you could set an unlimited sample size. But once that time limit has been reached, it will stop whatever sample it's got to move on to the next frame. I've never really had a use for it. You might end up with variable sample counts. You might as well just go with a reliable sample count consistently throughout. So we'll leave that at 0. Right then, moving on. So now we're going to talk about where our animation will go once it's rendered. So as you can say, the frame range has been set up correctly automatically for us. Start frame, end frame, and it does it one by one. In terms of the output, I'm not going to touch it myself, but basically if you select the folder icon, you can save it wherever you like. I recommend saving it into its own folder because it has to do, because of the next step that I'll tell you, it's recommended that you do it into its own folder to keep it all collectively together. And one of the important reasons for it to be in its own folder is because a lot of you might want to just jump to making it into a video straight away, and that's fine. You got FFM, you can use an MP4 video clip, but you do also run the risk of that, because what you run the risk of happening is that if it's a very big render and you have to leave it overnight to render, and something goes wrong while you're asleep, it crashes, unexpected updates on your computer device, all the progress made so far will be lost, and you'd have to start from square one. If you do it as a PNG and you do it image by image, still images, it would have, once it's rendered the image, it will save it to once it's rendered one frame, it will save it to your computer, and that way, then if it stops, you can just continue from the frame that you left off at. The reason I recommend PNG instead of JPEG is because JPEG has a lot of compression that we don't want. We want to keep it the best quality possible. If you want to go a bit higher, you can use TIFF. But, those are the only two I recommend. You also, manually override your compression, and I know you're thinking like a sequence of small images, but later on I will show you that there is a tool on Blender that allows you to turn each frame of image into a video clip, which takes a lot less time to render, which will be a lot easier for you. So that's why I recommend the still image, because it's just as easy to do it that way, and you don't run the risk of losing your progress. So before we move on to our final render, there is a couple of things I do want to check before we move on. One of them is, so I'd like to just check, if I take this frame 150, I'd like to just quickly check that all of the face orientation, there we go, see? Anywhere that's blue means that the faces are facing the right direction. Anywhere that's red means it's the wrong direction. We don't want that in the final render, because basically it's like each face is like a plane. There's the right side and the wrong side. So I would think the cube's going to assume that we want the outside pieces, but it doesn't realise that we're using it as an enclosure. So these faces here are all red because it's the wrong face. So it's quite simple. Go to edit mode, select the cube, press A to select every single edge. I believe it's Shift N, yeah. And if we come to the bottom left, because that hasn't done anything, it's only for all the outward faces. But we want it to do for the inside faces, so we tick the inside box. And there we have it. Each inside face is now blue. I don't need to worry about the outside ones because we weren't using the outside ones. So I'm happy with that. Turn that off now. One thing I really want to do, I want to up the elevation of the sun, because I wanted to create more effect on the sprinkles. So if we go to the world settings, I'm just going to change this to 20. Oh, that's 15. Change it to 25. That isn't going to work as well as I thought. Let's create a shadow on the top end instead. No, it's going to have to stay at 20. I really thought that would work, but it's clearly just goes over the cube instead. No matter. Oh, moving on. Two things left to show. If we go back into rendering mode, two things left before the final render. Select the camera. Hold on, a bit too zoomed in for my liking. We got the camera's data. Scroll down. Create depth of field. As you can see, the whole image has gone blurry, and that's because we don't have a focus object. So if we just click the eyedrop and click the cake, and f-stop is the amount we like to focus on the cake, and I'm going to increase that to 6 maybe. We'll see what 6 looks like. I'm going to put it at 6, I think. Just put a bit of attention on the cake. Yep, I'm happy with that. And then to the final thing, we go to our renderer and we turn on motion blur. Right. You know what I am going to do? I'm going to make this, I might lower this actually. See what 5 looks like. Yeah, I prefer 5. And that's it. There we have it. So once that's all done, you're more than welcome to start rendering. You can either do one by one, or you can render your image first and then render an animation, or you could render your animation. So we go ahead and just start with that render. So now you've rendered your final animation. Now you want to see it as an actual video. So I'm going to create a new file. We're going to go to video editing so it sets up all nice and neatly for us. And then we need to add that sequence of images to this little timeline here, as you can see. So press Shift A, press image sequence, and then obviously you navigate to your own image sequence. You go to where all the images are stored, you select all of them, and you add them in. There's mine. Now that you've added them in, you play the animation. For me, obviously, it's going to be a little bit choppy, just while it loads in. And let it run a couple of times. One thing that you will notice that it plays at 24 frames per second. And obviously, because it's a new file, so to speak, it's reset it to 24 seconds, 24 frames per second, as you can see on the right hand side here. We don't want it to be 24 frames per second. We want it back to the 30. The reason that we made it 30 in the other one was so we could see how it looked in the viewport. But now that we're at this next stage, we want it to look, let's say, back to 30 frames per second. One other thing I'd like to add, this is also a render that I've made at an earlier stage, that's why it looks slightly different, but essentially you'll have the same view. Not to worry about the fact that it looks slightly different at all, because all the controls that we're about to do will be the same for your own animation. So what you need to do is if you pause this now, I'd like to really hold out this last frame. If I take it to the last frame, and it just stops instantly. I really want to hold that final look because that's where we get taking everything that's going on in the scene. So in order to do that, I've got to click on the very end. Now that's selected, you can either drag it, we press G and move it. I'm going to move it to 250. Now, moving on. Now, there we go. You can see it just cuts off there. Kind of want it to fade away. fade to black. I know it's a shift A. We add colour. So it already shows black for us, so that's perfect. It just switches to black at the moment. It works from top to bottom, so as expected, it just cuts to black. But we want it to fade to black. So we selected with a shift A again, we press fade and we press fade in. And then we select that, it fades to black. Much better. And so we're watching it, perfect. Right, so now you can choose again where you want to save the file to. And now the file format is going to be FFmpeg video this time. Where the MP4, go down to encoding. So that's basically setting it to MP4. If you've got different versions of output file formats, then you choose a different one. But we're going to stick with the MP4. Now to move on to output quality, you can use lossless to absolutely make sure nothing's removed at all. But I think perceptually lossless is the best out of all the options because it looks like you've lost nothing, but it has kind of compressed it ever so slightly for you. And I just think it's the best option to have. I believe that is everything that we need, so we can just render the animation again. If I actually choose a file to save it to, I can actually show you this. I'll just save it anyway. And then I can just render animation. Oh, hold on, bear with. Oh no, if I click render animation, it is working for me. You can see in the top bottom of the screen, see it says sequence renderer. It's rendering it all together now, each frame by frame. It might be a bit slower, which doesn't matter. Yours might go a bit quicker. Just wait for it to finish. And then it's really taking this image. And then it should fade to black. Perfect. So that will be rendered for me now. Be all done, perfect. Well, to show you the final render. There we go. There we have it. Spinning around. Settles down. Fades to black. So that's it then. Series is now complete. By now you should have a successful cake. And, I hope you're all very proud of how far you've made it so far. And I'm proud of anybody who does choose to follow this tutorial. Should now are now not a complete beginner blender anymore. Should have a bit more experience to you. But moving on in the future, I will be posting more tutorials online on YouTube. Different types of tutorials. I think the next plan is to teach you how to create human bodies. And so just stick around and there'll be loads of tutorial content to come. Do add my Instagram, follow my Instagram, link is in the description to keep up to date with any sneak peeks for what's next to come. But that's it from me from this series. Thank you for staying with me this far. If you did make it this far, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It means a lot. And I'll see you in the next series.